Hello, everybody, and welcome again to my journey as I go through my favorites list on fanfiction.net. Uh, Much faster turnaround on this video than the last one, I'll tell you that. But hey, let's dive into these stories and give you my takes. So let's start with Don't Panic, Only 780 Weeks Until the Next Dark Lord by apAidan. And this is a short, snarky conversation that revolves around how the attitudes in Britain in like the Harry Potter universe don't really seem to change, and why that might be. Takes place after the Battle of Hogwarts at the end of book 7. Um, it's certainly enjoyable, and I do recommend people give it like a look, give it a read, since it's a short story and it's a nice enough one. But it's not something you need to reread, and it's not really anything that rewards revisiting. So I do say give it a look, but it's not going to stay on my list. From there, we move to The Next Great Adventure by ThatGuyYouKnew. And this is a Harry Potter crossover with Warcraft, where Harry gets tired of the wizarding world and opens up a portal, which lands him in Azeroth, where he saves a night elf from Felwood and starts making up a harem of his own. If that sounds familiar, it should, because in my last video I had a story called Wizard Rune Master by Plums, which is basically the same starting concept. Minor differences here, but a lot of the first chapter is very similar to the last one. And the author does say that he was inspired by that story and a couple others, but it's definitely noticeable. And if you don't read the author's note at the beginning and read it, you might, if you had read them back to back, you might be, hey, plagiarism. But it's like there is differences there, mainly with like how the initial state of Harry after the war is, whereas in Wizard Rune Master he was basically betrayed by everybody and they were all coming to kill him. Here, he just got tired of. He was treated fine. He just got tired of the world and just started researching for a way to get out because he was just bored, I guess, in a sense, and didn't want to deal with his notoriety and stuff. And because of that earlier difference, this Harry is a lot less, pretty less jaded than the one in Wizard Rune Master, and actually is much more snarky. He's a lot more willing to banter right off the bat, and it's a lot more just like he takes shit to a point, but also just says fuck you. Whereas like Wizard Rune Master had Harry being pretty much closed off unless he was like talking to people he respected, and then it kind of built, and while there were some moments of humor, it was built much more on like gravitas and like general respect. Here, Harry is kind of like, he's not afraid to, like, first time he meets Sylvanas, just to poke, and, like, he's like, oh, why don't you use runes? Like, oh, Arthas used runes, so nobody should use runes. And he's like, how long are you going to tell a man to tell you what to do? And it's like, that's a great line, and it's a great, like, way of just poking fun at a huge, powerful figure. And he does that kind of constantly throughout this story. It doesn't get as far as Wizard Rune Master. Wizard Rune Master was a complete story, maybe not like finished, but complete in the sense that it felt like if you bought a World of Warcraft expansion, that is the story of the first like raid arc, like from the start of the expansion till the end of the first raid arc. That's what it felt like. Here, this story gets nowhere near as far. They don't even get to set up a base. Like it ends while they're still planning like the raid on Karzahan and ready to prepare a base for Harry's group. But the fact is, this one's a lot funnier. Not in the pure like ridiculous haha sense, but like the snarkiness and banter is a lot more prevalent and more focused on, and that leads to humor being a much larger interest of the story rather than just plot and drama like Wizard Rune Master was. And I've said many times that like comedy makes up for makes up a lot of ground where story may be lacking. And that's the case where it's like, if it was just looking for story-wise, Wizard Rune Master being complete and more serious is a better story. But honestly, if it's between Wizard Master and the great in this story, the next great adventure, I think I would rather reread this one. Not to say that the other story is bad or that like after reading this I now want to take that off my list. I still want to keep that. But if it's just a choice between those two one on one, like I think I'd get more enjoyment out of this because of the humor. So that's just to me. And that's obviously my taste. I still think this both of these are good, and I think this is still enjoyable even though it's not complete. So it's gonna stay on my list. Going to Naruto now, we have A Wrinkle in Time by Right for Life, and this is a time travel story where Naruto, Lee, and Shikamaru, after basically the whole war is destroyed, like Konoha is destroyed, travel back in time to just a little bit before the Chunin exams, and try to save Konoha. Um, Basically, there's a focus on Lee, Shikamaru, and Naruto as a group. Like they basically just do all their stuff together as a group, and then but that's like half the story. With the other half is constantly going to different higher ups or different ninjas who start getting interested in them based on what they do. Which, to be fair, it's not like they hide themselves very well. Like they become pretty dramatic with the fact that hey, look, we changed, we did shit, even though they don't really reveal the time travel bit until the final chapter that this author wrote before stopping. It's not complete. It gets to the end of the Chunin exams, and that's it. And while I did find it a comfortable, easy read, I don't really see a need to revisit it. There's no huge scenes that stick out that were like, I think I would love this like just for there to come back just for the scene, or that this is a must read. And overall, like I said, like the way that they're cavalier about how they're hiding it, but not really, in a world where ninjas are like super paranoid and stuff. Like I don't think really fits, and they should be more questioning. I think I think it's a good read and comfortable, but at the same time, I don't see a need to read it more than once or come back to it. So I'd say give it a look, but it's not going to stay on my list. All right, next is Harry Potter New Game Plus by Brinko, and this is a video game story where Harry dies, finds out his life's turned into a game, and restarts his life. Pretty standard, but this story has a small trick where Harry, very near the beginning of the game, after the first couple chapters, basically out of bounds, like finds an out of bounds glitch and pops out of the game and ends up in like our world, like the not like regular world, and stays there for a bit, where he starts finding, he finds out about regular video games, and starts learning about them. He dives into them as like a course and finds out like, okay, how do I break games? How do I what are all the tropes? What is this? What are the conventions? Like how do I do it? And preps himself before jumping back into his own world. And I think that is a super interesting concept. I've seen a couple stories, very few, that are like that are about like gaming stories where the protagonist ends up like or at least has enough knowledge to like, okay, let's exploit the shit out of this or like do this. And this is a great start for how he finds out, especially for not knowing, because he shouldn't know with his backstory. um, but the thing is, after he gets back to the game, we get like one chapter where he's on the Hogwarts Express, and he throws a bunch of the terms that he now recognizes out, and like the tropes that he recognizes out, and that's it. So there isn't really much here, even from the humor side. Like it's a great starting concept, I feel, but it doesn't really go anywhere. The only novelty that is really here is that there is one chapter where the author added like a game facts style walkthrough, as if the game the game was an actual game in our world, and if somebody had written a walkthrough for it. And that's novel. But it's not like it's super amazing, hilarious, or anything like that. I just don't really see a need for anybody to read this by itself with the fact that it never continued. So it's not going to stay on my list. Next is Inaccurate Legends by Midnock Duck, and this is great. This is an alternate version of the Fifth Grail War from Fate Stay Night, where all of the servants are basically summoned from a single other tale. It's Shiro still gets Arturia, but it's not the regular King Arthur. It's King Arthur from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Sorry, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And so are all the other of the other characters, which are freaking hilarious. I love the ones that they've picked. All of them are entertaining as hell. If you like Fate Stay Night or Monty Python and the Holy Grail at all, I think you, and if you have any sense of humor at all, I think you will love this. Super hilarious and short. Highly recommend it. It's going to stay on my list. Next is another Harry Potter crossover with Harry Potter Knight of the Moon by Joe Beast Master Elf. And this is Harry crossing over with My Little Pony, where Harry, basically during the Horcrux trip, Hermione and Ron both leave him. And just when Ron leaves, Hermione goes too. And Harry, feeling betrayed, asks for help, and Nightmare Moon reaches out and says, "I'll give you some power if you become my servant." Which, okay, so Harry accepts because he's low, beats out Voldemort, and then gets sucked to Equestria to save Nightmare Moon right before she would get hit with the elements of harmony in the first episode or second episode. This is all the first chapter, by the way. So and then we get out of Harry, and now we're in Equestria, and we do time jump, and stuff happens. Like, this story moves really fast. Like, there's a lot of, like, each like episode or quests worth of thing is basically 2, maybe 3 chapters. And so a lot of it there's a lot of stuff happening. In fan fiction terms, it's really fast, and word count wise, it's pretty fast, especially in terms of my fanfics that I read. So it feels like not a lot of it's stuck with me because it's just moving so fast, and some of the little gags of like some girls liking Harry seem to be a little fast, or just, well, they are just a nudge, so maybe it's not that important. But I did still really enjoy this fic. However, I feel a bunch of my enjoyment from this also was just from nostalgia and just my personal bias. Whereas I think if I came at this with fresh eyes, I probably would not have liked it as much. Especially because also the story's not complete, and while it does have a decent bit of humor, humor is not the full focus. But it is certainly enjoyable. So yeah, like, I think if I read this story and like objectively graded it by itself, I'd probably give it like a C minus. Like, overall engagement, but as this is my opinion as it is right now, even with the reread, I still find myself really enjoying this. So on a quality wise, I would say give it a few chapters, like give it probably like 5 chapters, and if you like it, then you'll like the rest of it that's there. If not, like I said, it's not the best fic. It's a mediocre to good fic, but it's going to stay on my list. And the final one for this video is The Clock Spins Faster by Shu the Other Guy. And here we have time travel with Final Fantasy VII. This one puts Cloud, takes a Cloud from After Advent Children and puts him in his old body and like old situation a little bit before the events of Crisis Core. And it barely gets started before the author stopped updating. It's weird. I know I've said this a lot, and it's weird to say that about stories that are longer than a bunch of books. Like, this story is 67,000 words. That is more than like any of the first 3 Harry Potter books, and it's still, like, the fact is, it really doesn't. It sets up the initial situation of Cloud being sent back in time, etc., and there is like one setup mission where he's dealing with and getting a lot of people's attention on him before he leaves, but it's really like all of that is really just an inciting incident. Like, it's decently written and a bit engaging, but you're once again in a territory where the focus of this story is plot and drama, and the plot and drama never didn't progress enough to complete any arcs, or so you don't leave satisfied as a reader, you know. And it's just the end. There's no, and again, like that, like a couple other scenes where like there's no big moments or must-read scenes. In my opinion, I feel like it's sad to say, like, while I do think the writing is pretty good, because the author never updated and just stopped, and it's not, I feel like by itself where it is now, it's not worth revisiting, and so it's not going to stay on my list. And there we go, another 7 stories down. I am really hoping this will take maybe a year more. I'm hoping I'll be done before my 5th year anniversary. Definitely not before 4 year, because right now, like, so fan fiction status time, let me tell you, I have now read 871 stories, and 410 of them have stayed on my list. So 871, and I've looked at my favorites just now. I now have a little, like, 379 stories left. So even if I read one a day, that's going to take more than a year. But like I said, because I'm hoping it'll end before my 5th year anniversary, because my 4 year anniversary of this thing is going to be coming up in September. So let's just hope. Let's see. But yeah, with the pace, I know that's not really the pace I've been going at currently. Ever since after my 1st year, I've definitely slowed down. But I'm gonna try. I don't know, but I'm doing this for me. I'm not doing this for anybody else. You guys, anybody who's watching this, if you enjoy these stories, my commentary, or anything like that, the fact that you're doing it, it's a side benefit to me, because I've been doing this for myself. But I am happy if if any of you guys have found a new story that you've liked and you've done that. I'm happy to share other people this stuff that I do enjoy and love. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. As always, links to all the stories that I just talked about were in the description down below, as well as links to a forum where I post these as well on sufficient velocity. So if you just want to read it in text, though video links are all there as well, and a link to my fanfiction.net profile if you want to see the favorites list there, or link to the playlist for this whole series if you want to see it from the beginning, or want to just hop around to any other thing in particular. But thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Take care.